When it comes to credit card debt, we hit a new all-time high. It's kind of crazy to think that credit card balances jumped about 10% within the last 12 months, which is a huge increase, taking us to $1.13 trillion in credit card debt as a nation, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which reported on Tuesday. Now, this, of course, with the increase in balances, brings our average credit card debt $6,360 per person, which is crazy because that is an all-time high. Kind of goes hand in hand. The more credit card debt that we have, the more reliance we have on plastic, the more people are going to go ahead and borrow. Now, consumers are not just spending more. It doesn't mean, as we're seeing inflation coming down, as we're seeing rates stabilize, the prices are not coming down with it, which means when it comes to going out and buying things, they are still super expensive, even though consumer price index went from an all-time high of 9.1% all the way down to 3.4, which was December of 2023. The prices are still staying relatively high. Prices, when you look, again, big picture, haven't come down as fast as we have been seeing the CPI kind of fall. Meanwhile, households are continuing to really strain the budget, carrying more debt and having to pay for more debt. Now, if you think of that 6,000 plus balance, if you're making the minimum payment on that balance, it is going to take you 17 years to pay off that balance, which is incredible. So the average credit card rate has also increased. It is now well over 20% on average across those balances. So when you think of the trifecta of really what is going on, number one, credit card balances are getting higher. We've seen a big increase. Number two, the average balances have went up incredibly. And the three, to complete the trifecta, the rates have went up as well. It is really a lose-lose-lose situation, unfortunately, at this point. Now, this also goes hand in hand with credit card delinquency rates. They have jumped up roughly 50% in 2023 than we've seen in previous years, which means that it is getting to the point as a nation that consumers are struggling with payments and they're starting to affect their credit. They're starting to miss payments, or they're starting to not make payments at all. Now, there is a spin on this article from MSN that I really don't agree with. It says, even though this could be bad news for a majority of individuals, it's not all bad news because people that are paying off their credit cards are reaping an incredible amount of rewards for cashback and travel rewards without paying the higher balances because they're not carrying a balance. Now, for me, that is just wrong. In my opinion, it is just wrong. A lot of people might not agree with me, but overall, if you have one chunk and one majority of individuals over here that are just trying to get by, that are legitimately budgeting, the things are just too expensive to really afford, and they're trying to manage the best they can with the budget they have, with the income they earn to get by, and some of them do have to rely on credit cards when it comes to emergency funds. Other people that just rely on credit cards because they don't budget, because they don't choose to budget, or they're just overbuying everything. But then we have another group over here which has more than enough money, is managing the budget, is paying off the credit cards every single month. And you have the group over here, like I said, the earlier ones that are paying for the rewards of all the individuals. Now, there has been a couple studies from the Federal Reserve that said almost 75 to 80% of the rewards programs are from people that cannot pay off their cards in their entirety, which to me is kind of scary to think that that is the case. The average credit card charges 20.74%. Now, even though, again, we've seen kind of rates stabilize, credit card rates continue to increase, balances continue to increase. And again, if you made the minimum payment on that card, not only would you pay it off in 17 years, you would also pay over $9,000 in interest on your $6,000 balance over 17 years. Again, kind of incredible. Now, unfortunately, it looks like the biggest group that we're seeing this is millennials. Millennials are leaning into credit card and credit card debt, and they are leaning very hard. Now, the reason for this is credit cards are accessible to almost anyone, even if you don't qualify for a loan. When you look at Discover, when you look at Capital One, when you look at Chase, when you look at most financial institutions, they will give you a credit card. They will give you a credit card almost regardless of anything. It is very, very easy to get a credit card, and some of them give much higher limits than I would probably ever think that an individual should have. When you look at them, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 on a credit card line, to me is just kind of insanity. Now, additionally, 20.1 million new credit cards were opened in the fourth quarter of 2023, which means when it comes to not only the debt spending, is knowing the holiday spending, a lot of people opened up new credit cards just to do their holiday shopping, which again raises up all of those rates. And also, a majority of the people that are of the millennial age that are borrowing, and most of the people are the ones that cannot afford it. They said a majority of the people who opened up those new credit cards were subprime credit, which means a credit score at or below a 600 range, according to TransUnion, which means, again, the biggest group of millennials that cannot afford to make the payment, that have poor or damaged credit, are the ones that are borrowing more money on credit cards, which again is kind of crazy. Now, of course, with the millennial generation, this goes hand in hand with having to repay student loans. There's definitely a conjunction where you only make so much money if you're looking at paying your student loans or paying your credit cards. The majority of people would pay their student loans before they would cover up those credit cards. So how do we get out of this? Really, budgeting. Budgeting is the key. When you know the budgeting might be harsh, might be time to really cut back on a lot of things, might be even temporarily to go to a super strict budget, meaning that you're going to break it down. Now, there's also a couple tips. Number one, a lot of people look at balance transfer credit cards. Now, these, of course, do come with a fee, but you're not covering up the balance. But the problem with these are, majority of people who balance transfer to a 0% credit card and 12, 15, 21 months, they transfer to a 0% credit card. Then they take the balance, they transfer to a 0% credit card, and you can see how this kind of snowballs into actually never paying off the debt. And then, of course, what happens during that time is there's an emergency that comes up. They're putting a little bit more on the credit card. They pay the balance transfer fee. Then they put a little more on the credit card, and it goes hand in hand. Now, the alternative to this is looking at doing unsecured loans through the debt consolidation method. I approve of this method. Credit card zero balance transfers, there's a very few people that really get away with it and really find the benefit from it, because again, most people don't pay it off by the end of that promotion, that balance transfer period. But when you get into unsecured loans, it is a set rate, it is a set term. So what we mean by that is if you're sitting on that same $6,000 and you're taking a loan out, let's say a personal loan for 36 months, you can cut your 25, 28, 30% interest rate down to 9, 10, 11, 12%. Literally cutting 50% of your interest rate off the top. And with it being a set term, like I said, if you're looking at, let's say 36 months, in 3 years, that debt is going to be gone. But the caveat to this one is you cannot accumulate any new debt. That is the big point, guys. When you do the debt consolidation loans, even if you do the balance transfers, if you are accustomed and if you are continuing to charge up those cards, it's never going to make a difference. It's up to you to take accountability. It's up to you to break that debt cycle, meaning that you're not going to put more money on credit cards at an exorbitant rate because you want to go ahead and consolidate that and get it gone at a certain point. Now, you can also ask your credit card issuer to lower your rate. Crazy enough, 76% of people who ask their credit card companies for a lower rate within the past 12 months have received a lower rate. So a very good way just to save some money off interest off the top, because they know at that point you might have paid tens, thousands, even hundreds of thousands of interest, depending on exactly how long that you've had those cards, which means even if they give you a little bit of a discount, you're still going to pay that card because you're already kind of tied to them with the loans that you already have. So guys, kind of crazy to think that the average credit card balance jumped 10% to $6,360 as a balance on there. And then, of course, the rates are much higher for those cards. We've seen over 20.1 million new cards in Q4 alone of 2023. And honestly, it is going to get to a tipping point where people can no longer borrow, and then they're going to be stuck because they have so many high credit card balances already, not being able to make the payments, and then, of course, not being able to borrow any additional funds. So, all right, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think. What is your answer to this? Subscribe to the channel if you like the content. And as always, thank you guys for watching.